Militants attacked the In Amenas gas plant at dawn. They took hundreds of people hostage, and by the time the unprecedented crisis was over, some 40 workers were dead. One of the victims was French national Yann Desjeux, and France 24 has been to meet his son. On this somber anniversary, we also spoke to a French woman who managed to escape.
Muriel was the only female expatriate working at the In Amenas gas extraction facility. On the second day of the hostage crisis, the nurse found a way to escape the compound, as around 40 Islamist terrorists stormed their way in. Recently, former Algerian colleagues sent her these pictures, taken in her room and office just after the attack.
You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet marks. That's where I used to work, at this computer. When I saw these pictures, I was so relieved I managed to escape, because these shots were aimed at a person's height, and I could have been sitting there.
It was 5:50 a.m. when the emergency siren went off. Thinking there had been an accident, Muriel quickly put on a chemical protection suit.
We had no idea what was going on. We were waiting for the control room to give us an update on the situation, and we were wondering why the alarm. Then an engineer came running towards us yelling, "It's a terrorist attack. They're armed. Go and hide." So we all started running, looking for somewhere to conceal ourselves. We were told to lock ourselves in the offices or in our rooms and wait for the army to arrive. That's what most people did if they could. I'm not saying that's why some of my colleagues were killed, but many of those who hid in offices or their rooms ended up getting caught by the terrorists. Some were killed immediately.
At the time of the attack, 800 people were working on the huge industrial complex, including 140 expats from a dozen different countries. At first, Muriel hid in her office, some 3 kilometers from the living quarters. With explosions and gunshots going off all around, she turned on her radio to learn that buildings were on fire and hostages being executed. After waiting 25 terrifying hours, she decided to try and escape. Algerian colleagues hid her within their group, sneaking her under the compound's boundary fence. Once outside, they walked towards a unit of the Algerian army, their hands up, so as not to be mistaken for terrorists.
When I first arrived at this facility, I did raise the question of security. This was Algeria, and right by the border with Libya. But I was always told not to worry, that the compound was heavily guarded by the Algerian army, that this was a secure perimeter and difficult to penetrate. They said the place was so huge, it was like a country within a country, and you practically needed a visa just to enter the area. I was told that there were army patrols, military vehicles stationed nearby, and even drones circling the area, so there would be no problem. But what haunts me now is how could these terrorists have had such easy access to the compound and the living quarters?
A year has passed, but Muriel has been unable to go back to work. She's now trying to rebuild her life abroad and has just finished co-writing a book investigating the In Amenas hostage crisis. She hopes that an international team of investigators will eventually reveal just what happened during those 2 dramatic days.
I'd like the Algerian government to share with us all the information they managed to extract from the terrorists they captured. Tell us how the Algerian army led the assault. I think they do have precious information, but so far there's been no cooperation on their side at all.
Florian is the son of Yann Desjeux, the French hostage killed during the attack. He feels much the same as Muriel, that Algeria and all the other countries who lost nationals in In Amenas have yet to cooperate and give a clear picture of what took place last January.
When I saw my father's coffin surrounded by nearly 40 other coffins, I suddenly realized this had been a massacre, and I vowed that I would get to the truth about what had happened.
Florian left his job and has spent the last year investigating the assault himself.
We know for a fact that people had access to the compound, even though they shouldn't have been there. The people in charge of security didn't know these men were on site. We also know there had been several incidents with bus drivers threatening foreign workers, saying they would die if they continued working there.
Florian's father was deputy head of the compound's security. He was aware of these threats and had asked for increased security measures, which never materialized.
When terrorists stormed the place, they had very detailed notes, names, room numbers, phone numbers. They even had the home addresses in Norway of Norwegian workers. The terrorists knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew the place very well. They knew that there were several VIPs, foreign delegates, and company managers on site. There's no way they could have known all that without inside help.
In France, prosecutors have opened a formal inquiry into the hostage-taking and subsequent Algerian army operation. But their investigation will depend on whether the Algerian authorities allow a French judge to inspect the In Amenas premises.
And for more on this, we can now cross to London and speak to Imad Mesdoua, a political analyst specialising in North Africa and the Sahel region. Hello, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Now, the Algerian government promised to improve security at the facility. 1 year on, what's changed? Is it safe for foreign staff to return?
Well, I think the Algerian government has definitely taken some measures to secure not only the In Amenas facility, but secure the whole of the border region with Libya. There have been reports that some 25,000 Algerian soldiers have been placed between the Algerian and Libyan border. As you know, Libya has become a serious exporter of instability in the whole region. The In Amenas attack was maybe a predictive attack in the sense that it predicted some of the instability that was going to come out of Libya and into neighboring states in the months that followed. Now, there's been also been quite a lot of cooperation between Algerian authorities and executives from these oil companies and these gas companies operating in Algeria to reassure them about the measures taken. There have been discussions at the very highest level in London, in fact, as well as in Algiers. But very few details as to what kind of audits, what kind of specific measures are going to be taken or have been taken.
Now, recently, 2 oil workers were killed in Libya. So is it risky for oil workers and other expats all across that region still?
Yes, of course it is. And it will continue to be a dangerous area to work in, so long as there is the kind of turmoil that we're now seeing. I mentioned Libya just now because many parts of that country have become a sort of headquarters or base for Islamist militants and groups, as was Mali before the French intervention, an area for them to thrive and prepare attacks on Western interests in general, but also local interests for states in the region. And they're going to use these attacks because they are spectacular, first of all. They get them notoriety. Second of all, because they get them money. And so when they kidnap French workers in Niger, for example, and ransoms are paid, then these groups benefit financially from it. And so unless there is a cooperation and a coherent and cohesive way to address these attacks at the international level, then unfortunately we can say no real security measures will fully secure an area which is as vast as Europe, in effect.
Now, you mentioned the French intervention in Mali. What effect has that had on Al-Qaeda's North African wing? What state would you say it is in now?
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that the French intervention had a short-term or medium-term effect on Al-Qaeda's capacity to operate out of that country. As you know, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb was not operating alone in that region. It was operating along with a very loose coalition of other Islamist groups such as Mujao. And as a result of what happened in Mali, you now have a fragmentation of these groups. But I'd say you have the threat that's gone to other areas. I keep repeating Libya now is a headquarters. The US government last week placed two Al-Qaeda and Islamic Maghreb affiliates, Ansar Sharia, two Ansar Sharia groups in Libya on their terrorist organizations list. So what it has done is it has undermined their efforts in Mali, but I'd say that because of the vastness of this area, which is the Sahel and the Sahara, they are able to operate throughout North Africa. Tunisia is another example, and now with increased turmoil, Egypt and the Sinai region as well. So what I'd say is that it has displaced the threat, but not completely eliminated it, far from that.
Imad Mesdoua, thank you very much indeed for joining us from London. It's time now for a short break. When we come back, I'll have the headlines and I'll be crossing live to Rome to speak to our correspondent about the Vatican facing a grilling over child sex abuse. Stay tuned for that and plenty more coming right up.